Hello YouTube, welcome to channel Anna Bella, and today I'm going to be doing my last ever Game of Thrones review. I'm reviewing the whole of the story from season 1 all the way up to season 7. Okay, the biggest thing that Game of Thrones has had a brilliant build-up, and then it had complete narrative dissatisfaction with all of its viewers / possible readers. I don't know how he's going to rectify it in the books. It takes him 5 years to write one, I believe. But unfortunately, the ending caused complete narrative dissatisfaction amongst all people, regardless of their background, regardless of their gender, whether they were male or female. It was a very dissatisfactory ending. I'm going to try and explain why, but what I am going to do first is I'm going to point out a couple of things that were really good. Sansa's ending, for her as a character, it was hugely satisfying to see her become Queen of the North. That is a big plus thing, so we're putting that in the plus category. Really good, not a problem with that. For her character, it was brilliant. Actually, what would have been more satisfactory was if she was actually pregnant, because then you'd be able to see, oh, things do continue, and we will get back to the whole female pregnancy thing again. Arya Stark, same with her. Her ending was satisfactory. Even though she killed the Night King, that was great. Brilliant, not a problem there. A lot of people did have a problem because they said it made her Mera Sue. To me, it didn't, because she's an assassin and she's been trained to do this, so it makes perfect sense for her to do that. Where the dissatisfaction comes from is the fact that you have these powerful male characters doing very little. Tyrion's development is brilliant, and he's a character that actually isn't dissatisfactory in any way. In fact, he becomes more moral as the books go along, and he becomes more conflicted. What is really annoying, and we are going to come on to this, is Bran and Jon Snow's story. Bran, of course, becomes the three-eyed raven, and he doesn't seem to want things. He can see the future, and he can control animals to do his bidding. But because he becomes this higher being, this deity, it takes him out of the mortal realm. Yes, he's physically crippled, but he then becomes almost like a god king. And it reminds me very much of the Neverending Story, when Sebastian rides the luck dragon, and in the end he becomes the emperor of his world, and he basically controls that world. And anything that he doesn't like, he tears down and destroys. And that's very similar to what could happen and is going to happen to Bran. No matter how moral he pretends to be, because he's not really Bran anymore. He's not Brandon Stark. He's like the talking history book, basically, who knows all the possibilities, has seen everything before. So for a character like that, it almost reminds me of the Emperor in Warhammer 40k, who's plugged in and they use his consciousness, and his consciousness is used to support this corrupt system, but they can't. It's almost like the system itself then becomes dependent on one person to make all the decisions for them. And yes, traditionally this is what a king would do, but the council would have more input to correct the so-called faults of the human king. But Bran doesn't seem to have any of these faults, so you are in a way, and this is where the dissatisfaction comes from narratively, when Tyrion says, oh, Bran is the wheel that Daenerys was trying to break. That's statistically untrue, because Bran was not any of these corrupt male characters that are crippled. Yes, he's a symbol, a representation of a corrupt, decadent, destroyed symbol, and you could say that that's why he's a Bran the Broken. That's why he is the broken wheel. The wheel is broken, Bran is the symbol of it. But you haven't got the corruptness there, so you've got very just, very goodly rule coming from a person that has broken the wheel, but they don't quite know how to put it together. And this is where the dissatisfaction comes from. Obviously, the Daenerys storyline is very dissatisfying, but actually as a woman, it kind of is and it isn't, because you can see that with the loss of Drogo and her son and her brother, and one of her dragons becomes a zombie and then dies, and then another one of her dragons gets killed, you can see that the loss of all these children is having a toll. Her character is changing. She is not going to stop. She has been doing this cycle of I take over a place, I burn it down, I then rule it. I take over a place, I burn it down, I then rule it. But she has got no staying power. It's almost like she's got to move on, conquer it for a while, then move on. And her version of liberation is actually extinct your population. She hasn't got sustaining power of, are the harvests coming in? What about the drainage system? It's these little problems that she's not seeing. She's an overall person. And it's interesting that she understood that Jon Snow, when he had the stab from the Night's Watch in the heart, when he got stabbed in the heart by them, she understood that he took a knife to the heart for his people. But actually he didn't. He made a mistake. The Night Watch didn't like what he was doing, and they killed him for it. Because it was too much change. Too much change too quickly disrupts the system, and people have to go with you. But Dany and Sansa both have the same experience. They're both sold into marriage, and they're very similar. It's just that Sansa happens to be Jon Snow's sister, and he can trust her. He can't trust Dany because she's a Targaryen, but also because she's his aunt, and also because her pattern of behaviour is actually insane. So she's got to go. This brings us, sadly, to Jon Snow. He was Night Watch Commander, King of the North, leader of the Free Folk, unbent king, unbending king, king beyond the wall, free, no lands, no title, no legacy. That's what he ends up with, but he's the most dissatisfying character because he's a bloke who does not act, and when he does act, it is too late to save the Queen, who happens to be his aunt. Now, if Jon Snow was a more politically minded person, we think that, yes, he's killed her and he's going to take the throne. But he can't, because he's Jon Snow. He's the only person that's got a legitimate claim to the throne. And it's interesting when Tyrion asks Brandon Stark why he's not Lord of Winterfell, because it's his right. He's the only male heir of Ned Stark. So statistically, he should be the one to actually be Lord of Winterfell. He's not. He's given it to Sansa, who is Lady of Winterfell, because she actually is very good at it. She cares about how much grain we have. She cares about the people. She makes sure that their needs come before hers, and make sure that it's run as it should be, because that's what it means to govern. You have to care for the people, otherwise they will rise up and rebel against you. That's just the way it goes. But Brandon Stark doesn't want it. When in fact you figure out what he is sort of angling for. He doesn't even want to be king. It's just sort of thrust upon him because he's considered the most experienced. But this makes Jon Snow such an annoying character because he is so good. He is so trusting. And even when Tyrion tells him this information, he says, "Why do you think Sansa told me this? Because you are the only person that has the right to choose, because you are the true heir. You are the last true-born Targaryen. It's either you or Dany. Which one is it?" And unfortunately, because Jon leaves it so late to correct her, they even let the spider die, which is absolutely awful. In fact, the most touching scene in the whole of the last episode is when Tyrion kisses the seat that the spider used to sit in, because he represents the realm, and the realm is the people, who we don't see, but there are billions and billions of people, Westeros, whose needs need to come before power. That is why we govern. We govern to protect people. Weirdly enough, oddly enough, that is the main purpose of having a king, queen, small council government. That's the whole purpose of it. It is to provide and make sure that the people's needs get met. Even in King's Landing, somebody's got to sort out the plumbing. Even at Castle Rock, his father put Tyrion in charge of the plumbing because the plumbing matters, because where the poo goes dictates whether we live or whether we die, whether our food gets contaminated or not. It is so crucial, which is really, loads of people die of poor hygiene. That's what's happening in underdeveloped countries all over the world. Poor hygiene kills people. It is fundamental to the running of a stable society. I cannot see Jon Snow going anywhere near it. He would get bored with all the minute, middly planning details that involves running a country, hence why you have a small council to take it on and diversify it out. But Jon Snow is so dissatisfactory because he doesn't step up. He never steps up. In fact, the one time he did step up, he got stabbed in the back for doing so. Hence why he has learned, if I stand up, I'm not going to get anywhere. And that is why it's so narratively dissatisfying, because we are denied the active male protagonist. Brianna becomes the leader of the Kingsguard, which is really great, but we don't see her pregnant, and we know that she's the virgin, and it is highly likely that she would become pregnant. This is a medieval fantasy land. They do not have contraception. Arya would be pregnant. Dany would be pregnant. Arya, Sansa, all these women would be pregnant. They would have no choice in the matter, whether it's from Ramsay Bolton or whether it's from Jon Snow or Tyrion or whoever. These women would be pregnant, but we don't see the consequences of that. The only person who happily gets pregnant is Sam's missus, who is pregnant with her second child. And everybody's like, yay! And it's quite interesting. Do we need Arya Stark sailing off to discover the new world with her needle? Is it like Game of Thrones is so confusing with its gender politics, because at times it's really feminist, sometimes it's anti-feminist, sometimes it's really for men, sometimes it's really for women, and you're not quite sure where it's going. I mean, you have that whole, the spider made that speech, Dicks Matter. Yes, he's a male eunuch. He understands that being a male eunuch or being other has prevented him from taking an active part. But that being said, Jon Snow has a penis. He has possibly made Dany pregnant. We never get to see that promise fulfilled because he stabbed her. And that was the only sort of action that he has done. It didn't help his cause. In fact, it made it sort of worse. You know, so that is the most anti-feminist thing. We all love the spider because he represents the people, but when he comes out and he says that Bran has got to be king, but Bran's penis doesn't work. So the whole spider penis / dick speech is rendered totally useless. So it's saying, it matters. We have to have a man. So like they get a bloke, but who can't reproduce, so therefore do penises matter? No, it's kind of just weird and unnecessarily and really kind of backward thinking. I appreciate this is medieval times, people, but a eunuch puts in place a person who cannot reproduce after giving Dicks Matter speech, which yes, they do, but they kind of don't, because he puts somebody in place who's basically a eunuch themselves, while saying that being a eunuch is not worth anything. So it's kind of like, I'm not worth anything, but I think this, therefore we're going to have him and I choose this person. And then nobody turns around and says to him, actually, that person is exactly the same as you because they can't have children. But, yeah, but they have a penis, but it doesn't work. So I'm very confused. And I'm not sure who's more confused. There is the lack of marriage, that's happy endings. The only person that we do know that has the happy ending is Sam and his lady. Then you've got like the whole Iron Throne melting by the dragon. We can see that coming, and we know where Drogo the dragon took his mother. He took her east, back to Old Valyria. That's where he's gone. The big annoying thing, totally, that besides the Dicks Matter speech given by the spider, who is a character who is generally most beloved of people, is the fact that the final scene, when they've got the book and they're saying, talking about who's in it and who's not and this, that, the other, is you then have that, oh, what about the brothels? You have Tyrion then saying, I once took an ass wearing a pineapple into a brothel, and it puts women firmly as things, playthings for men, after everything that everybody's gone through. And you just sort of think that is the hugest sort of punch to females all over the world. Though weirdly enough, I will salute The Handmaid's Tale season 3 for its wonderful use of the car with the wings, and it reminded me very much of Daenerys with the dragon wings, which was kind of nice. But it did feel, a lot of this, Game of Thrones basically kicked in the teeth all of its readers with this final. It was so dissatisfying on so many levels. We can only hope that Jon Snow goes on to have many, many, many freeborn children with the wildlings in the north. It's just odd. It is very, very dissatisfying. It doesn't resolve the issues very well. Yes, in 10 years' time, Tyrion's going to go around and do his progress, because Brandon can't. He's got to stay in the main King's Landing bit, but I suspect he will take him with him. But I would be very, very surprised if Tyrion in 10 years' time does not make Sansa pregnant and that their children get put on the throne. I don't care if they get voted by all the nobles, because that's where it's going to go. Because Jon Snow is out. He's so far out. He's, you know, in King of the North. King beyond the wall. When they had a wall and it wasn't melted down by a zombie dragon. You know. But it's so dissatisfying because the last season of Game of Thrones had two things. One, they've got to save the world. Then they've got to decide how to rule it. But unfortunately, they saved the world before deciding who to rule it. So it is hugely dissatisfying on so many levels. And it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. It is so dissatisfying, the ending. Yes, it does give people with disabilities huge, huge ability and puts them in a position of power with Hodor and various others, the Reed siblings and Brandon Stark, and even Jaime Lannister with his dyslexia. But it doesn't allow people to truly be themselves. They then lock them, they break the wheel, have a broken wheel, but then they end up supporting this broken wheel that goes nowhere. And it's sort of like, yes, we need to get the waterworks working and sorting out the plumbing, and we need to get the brothels back, we need to set the economy in motion. So it's almost as if the little problems then become huge, massive problems. And it's sort of like, we just want to spend all our time faffing around with these, we don't want to see the big problems anymore. So it's very dissatisfying, and I'm sorry that this video has actually turned into sort of like an epic work, but it's dissatisfying from a show that has been really, really, really wonderfully written, had a beautiful narrative thread, only to sort of tie itself in a huge knot that is very frayed. Yes, it is narrative dissatisfaction. I can understand the parallels and it does work for me personally. Yeah, I can see the ending. It does work as an ending. But how it was done was just, ugh. And yes, it had that speech where she basically did a mirror image of Khal Drogo's speech. You know, we're going to tear down this, and we've done this, and we've done that. And you knew as soon as she'd said that speech to the Dothraki and to the Unsullied, you knew that she was going to die because her purpose as a character was done. And you were just like, oh, this is just so dissatisfactory on many levels. And Sansa, yes, is a character we root for, but we are not permitted to see her as an independent being at all. What would have been really nice is if actually we saw her do something that was independent. Yes, we did see her running Winterfell, and we did see her and Tyrion have that connection, that understanding, and passing on that knowledge. But it would have been really nice if it had actually come from Sansa herself, if Sansa had gone to King's Landing, rather than use Tyrion as the great messenger bird. And I appreciate the reasons why and wherefore and this, that, the other, but it is just so annoying. Anyway, that's basically my review of Game of Thrones. Narrative dissatisfaction. Is it anti-feminist? Is it feminist at all? I mean, there were such high hopes for it, for men and for women. And then we kind of just went, and the aftermath is just so, you know, even though we've got a woman on the throne in the north, and we've got Brandon there, and we've got Jon Snow there, it's so dissatisfying because it's just like, oh, really? Okay. And it's not Bran's fault at all, because he was such a well-written character and had such, you know, time. It's just that it just comes so out of the blue. It's not like he shouldn't have it, because he's actually a really good choice, but it's just how it's delivered. It's almost as if the packaging is just dissatisfactory. But the lead up to opening and the presents was so good. You know, we had great narrative satisfaction. It's just the ending. And there is that whole business that the women did speak less than the men, but that's not a problem because there were some strong female characters in this, hugely strong. And I actually found Jaime and Cersei's death hugely moving. Hugely moving. That was really well done. I will point that out. That was really well done. But what was interesting, and I did notice this when Dany was actually at Winterfell, was the fact that she couldn't connect with any of the characters. She was alone. She didn't have those connections with the characters. The only character that she did have a connection with was Jon Snow. And it was interesting that she left the banquet at the end of when they all saved the world and everybody was connecting and this, that, the other, and everybody could see that it was leading up to, oh, we're going to think Jon Snow's going to be king. Because that's where you could see it. And she only gave the bastard Baratheon boy that because everybody knew that he was a Baratheon boy anyway, and he should have had it. And he helped them. And it was a good move. But you really did feel that you wanted everybody to sort of welcome Dany and for her to tell them more and to be that. But she couldn't because she'd been separate from them for so long. So she was almost like doomed before she even set a foot onto Westeros, which is the truth, really. Hope you've enjoyed this review of Game of Thrones in general. Sorry to be so pessimistic. I wish I could give it a better review. The ending, I'm going to give 3 stars out of 5. The whole thing, as it is, out of 10 stars, I would give it a 7.5. Because it's been brilliant. It's just, the ending was meh. You know, it really was sort of like, why? You know, and that's quite sad. Hope you've enjoyed this. Please like, comment and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts on the ending of Game of Thrones. Yes, I know it ended ages ago, but I wanted to have some time to think about these things and to really, you know, go, you know, and not rush and allow things to settle. And I'm still hugely dissatisfied with the ending, which is annoying on many levels, which is why they then released that video game that you can play to decide your own ending. Because would you prefer Jon being king? I don't think I would, because he'd hate it. He really would absolutely hate it. Sansa, I think, would make a very good queen. You know, if I could, I'd write her as queen of the whole of Westeros, because I think she'd actually be a better queen than Dany. Even though they have similar experiences, and you could see that they were going to like clash and have a good head to head, and you feel denied that. That's the big thing, you feel denied of that good female because we had to save the world. It got in the way of some good character development, and good scenes could have come, I think. And I also think they rushed the Unsullied, and you can fully understand like why the Unsullied didn't get to choose and this, that, the other, but you knew as soon as certain characters died, things were not going to go well. Anyway, I've babbled far too much on this topic. I hope you've enjoyed my review. Please like, comment and subscribe, and let me know what you think about the ending of Game of Thrones in the comment boxes below. Thank you for your support, and bye everyone.